Students, and this time I've come with a new chapter, a journey toward the cultural assimilation. Alright, so now first introduction. What happened was, with the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate towards the beginning of the 13th century, there began a new phase in the cultural development. Delhi Sultanate जो है वो 13th century में आ गई थी. टर्क्स जो है अपने साथ क्या लेके आए थे? Arabic and the Persian culture, and this culture intermingled with the local traditions. Now this cultural synthesis जो दिल्ली सल्तनत के टाइम पर आई थी, that also increased further with the coming of the Mughals, and now the intermixing of the cultural traditions could be seen in the monuments, paintings, literature and music. Right? So only important thing to learn here is that the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate in 13th century, there began a new phase of cultural development. They brought Arabic, Persian culture which intermingled, which mixed with the local tradition, and this cultural synthesis was further increased with the coming of the Mughals. Now sometimes when I teach this, I always feel that, do you know the meaning of culture? See, culture is a sum total of everything. Your language, how you speak, how you dress up, what kind of, how you interact with people. So culture is sum total of everything. So when we are talking about the assimilation of cultures, we are talking about all the aspects of the culture. Right. So the next thing is about architecture. Now, the Delhi Sultanate marked a new phase in the architecture. So this is an important line, but the idea is that what was their requirement? I mean, what did they want? They want the houses to live and the places of worship. So whenever we talk about the architecture of the Delhi Sultanate, there are two things that they wanted. They wanted houses to live and the places of the worship. So the first mosque built by them was Quwwat-ul-Islam Mosque near Qutb Minar in Delhi. Now in these buildings, they have used the arches and the dome. So arch is some kind of like this. These are arches and this is dome, right? So they have used arches. Look, this is again an arch. So they have used arches and domes. Material that they used, that was a fine mortar in their building instead of a strong cement which could not hold the stones. Right? Now what is this mortar? Mortar means when a cement is mixed with sand. So this is how they actually kind of use them in their architecture so that mortar could hold the stones. Right? So use of mortar then became very important in North India. So extremely important now that the Delhi Sultanate, basically their architecture was important. Why? Because their only requirement was houses to live, places to worship, and the first mosque that they built was Quwwat-ul-Islam Mosque near Qutb Minar in Delhi, and the most prominent feature was their arches and their domes. Right? The material that they used was fine mortar. They did not use the strong cement because this will not hold their stones. So use of mortar now became very important in North India. Now comes the decoration. Now how did they decorate their areas? देखो, हम अगर decorate करें, we can put some flowers, we can put some paintings in a room. So what they did was they used geometric and floral designs. If you can just see here, combined with the panels containing the verses from Quran. So if you can just see from here, there is this floral design combined with the panels which have the verses from the Quran. So they borrowed the swastika and the lotus from Hindus. They borrowed these motifs from them, and they also added color by using red sandstone. This is very, very important. They use geometric and floral designs, and they combined with the panels containing the verses from Quran. Then they also borrowed motifs like swastika and lotus. They added color by using red color. Then yellow sandstone was also used so that the red sandstone can be easily shown off, right? Okay, now another building that has been talked about is Qutb Minar. Now Qutb Minar was actually completed by Aibak, but it was started by Qutbuddin Aibak but completed by Iltutmish. Very, very important. Qutb Minar was started by Qutbuddin Aibak but completed by Iltutmish. It tapers to 71.4 meters high. And what was the material which was used? Red and white sandstone and marble. Now if you can just see here, you can see these. Now its projected balconies are its special feature. So very easy. Qutb Minar started by Qutbuddin Aibak, completed by Iltutmish, tapers to a height of 71.4 meters. Material that they used is red and white sandstone, marble, and its projected balconies is its special feature. Now, so what were the other buildings under the Delhi Sultan? Now, the Khiljis. Now, specifically, I'm talking about Alauddin Khilji. Now, he built his capital at Siri, which was a few kilometers away from the Qutb Minar. Right? So Khilji is very, very important. Alauddin Khilji, he built his capital at Siri, right? And a few kilometers away from the Qutb Minar. Then comes your Tughlaqs. Now Tughlaqs, you had Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, Firoz Shah Tughlaq. What did they do? Now first, bache, they built huge palace fortresses complex called as the Tughlaqabad. Now Firoz Tughlaq also built a pleasure resort in Hauz Khas with a lake around it. He also built a new fort in a place known as Kotla. So obviously these Tughlaqs used to build these huge palace fortress complex which they called as Tughlaqabad. Firoz Tughlaq specifically built a resort in Hauz Khas with a lake around it, and he also built a new fort in a place known as Kotla. Right? Then comes your Lodhis. Lodhis were the last of the Delhi Sultans. Now they added special touch to their architecture by placing the tombs in the midst of the huge gardens, and Lodhi gardens were the finest examples of that. Right? So I thought I've given a picture, but I think I forgot to add the picture into it. So Lodhi gardens, because for the first time they started placing their tombs. Now tombs is where they bury their ruler, where they buried their ruler, and they would make the tomb amidst huge gardens. So Lodhi gardens are the finest example of this architecture. Right? So quickly, what have we done? The most important, the Delhi Sultanate started the new phase of the cultural development. There was amalgamation or the mixing of the local tradition plus the Arabic and the Persian, and this mixing increased furthermore in the time of Mughals. Right? Now these Delhi Sultanate, what did they want? They only wanted two things: houses to live, places of worship. So the first mosque they built was Quwwalut-ul-Islam Mosque near Qutb Minar in Delhi, and I told you that this is the dome and this is the arch that we are talking about, and they use fine mortar, that is cement mixed with sand, so that it could hold their stones. They did not use strong cement. For decoration, now obviously you've made a building, so how will you decorate the building? So they use geometric and floral designs combining with the panels containing verses from Quran. They also borrowed the motifs like swastika and lotus from Hindus. They added using the red color and yellow sandstone so that the red color can be very clearly visible. Now, the other building that they've talked about is Qutb Minar. It was started by Qutbuddin Aibak and completed by Iltutmish, 71.4 meters high. The material used is red and white sandstone and marble, and its projected balconies are the most important feature. Now we've also talked about the buildings under Delhi Sultans. Alauddin Khilji built his capital at Siri. The Tughlaqs built their huge palace fortresses complex called as Tughlaqabad. Firoz Tughlaq built a pleasure resort in Hauz Khas. He also built a new fort in a place called as Kotla. Then his Lodhis, they added something different because they placed their tombs in the middle of the garden. So Lodhi garden is one fine example of this. So we can just conclude now, under the Delhi Sultans, the intermingling of the Turkish and the local Indian art and architecture. So during the time of the Delhi Sultans, there was a mixing of the Turkish, because Delhi Sultans were Turks, and the local Indian art and architecture. Now we come to Mughal. Now we know that under the Mughals it actually increased. Now there was an outburst of cultural activity, बहुत सारी, and Mughal rule is also known as the second classical age after Gupta age of ancient India. Now what happened during the time of the Mughal? Now in the Delhi Sultanate we see the integration of the Turkish and the Indian features. Here we see the integration of Turkish and the Iranian style. Now, what were their most important architectural things? They made forts, they made palaces, they made gates, mosque and garden. So this is what they made: forts, palaces, gates, mosque and gardens. Now, this is how the Mughal garden looked. Now, in your book, they've only talked about 3 gardens. One is the Nishat garden in Kashmir. Then is your Shalimar Bagh in Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir, and the Pinjore gardens in Punjab. Now, these are very important. They can also ask you some questions on that. So, Nishat Bagh in Kashmir, Shalimar Bagh in Srinagar, Pinjore gardens in Punjab. Right, then we have the forts. Right, now this is the Agra fort. Now, right, Akbar was the first Mughal emperor to invest his time and means, the money and his time, on the construction of the fort. Now this Agra fort in red sandstone is the example of this. And this fort, this Agra fort, has lot many doors, has lot many gates here. Then number 2, in Agra, that is in Fatehpur Sikri, he has also built a palace cum fort, something like this, a palace cum fort complex at Fatehpur Sikri, 36 kilometers from Agra. Now, Fatehpur Sikri was the capital of the Mughal Empire under Akbar, and later this capital was abandoned due to lack of the water. Now, the complex also has many buildings in the Gujarati and the Bengali style of architecture. So, obviously, the first thing we are talking about the fort, and first one to use the forts or construct the forts was Akbar, and the most important is the Agra fort in red sandstone. The fort had many gates. The other thing is he also made the palace cum fort complex at Fatehpur Sikri. Now Fatehpur Sikri is 36 kilometers from Agra. Fatehpur Sikri was the capital of the Mughal Empire under Akbar, later abandoned due to lack of water. Then is your Panch Mahal and the Buland Darwaza, right? These are the 2 most important buildings. Now, in one of his buildings, the Panch Mahal, different type of pillars were incorporated. Gujarati style of architecture is used in the palace for his Rajput wife. इसके साथ बचे आपकी Persian influence भी है. They had these glazed. Glazed means shiny blue tiles for the walls or for the tiling in the roof. So they have also used the Persian influence by using the shiny blue tiles. Right, now this site, the Panch Mahal, is also declared as one of the World Heritage Sites. So most important, there are different type of pillars. The Gujarati style of architecture is used in the palace for his Rajput wife. Then you have the Persian influence in terms of the blue tiles, right? Okay, the other comes your the Buland Darwaza. Now this Buland Darwaza, it is the most magnificent building in the fort complex, was a gate, right? And it was called as Buland Darwaza. It was to celebrate Akbar's victory over Gujarat. And this is what we call as the arches, and these are the domes. Right? So this is important. Now Buland Darwaza was built to celebrate his Akbar's victory over Gujarat. Now you also have these various temples which have been mentioned. So I thought that how to learn these temples. Now first temple that they have mentioned is by Khajuraho, and Khajuraho temples, they are in Madhya Pradesh, and they were built by the dynasty known as the Chandelas, and they were known for its fine sculptures. Then they've also talked about the temples in Odisha. Now 3 temples have been talked about in Odisha. They had just given you, the place, like they had given you Bhubaneswar, Konark and Puri. So in Puri we have the Jagannath temple, at Konark we have the Sun temple, at Bhubaneswar Bhubaneswar we have Lingaraj temple, right? So these temples are important. They were the temples in Odisha. Then there's also another one, Brihadeshwar temple at Thanjore. Now this was built by Rajendra Chol, and this was one of the most important architecture during the Chol Empire. Right, so this is important. This is now very easy to learn. Khajuraho temples built by the Chandelas in Madhya Pradesh, Lingaraj temple at Bhubaneswar, Sun temple at Konark, Jagannath temple at Puri, Brihadeshwar temple at Tanjore built by Rajendra Chol. Now this is important, that okay, fine, there were these temples, but with the coming of Muslims, the mosque became very, very important, and mosque actually became an integral part of the Indian architecture. Ab mosque ke features kya the? Now if you can see, it had a large courtyard. See this area, minarets or the towers, these towers, domes like this, and use of Islamic calligraphy and geometric shapes. Mihrab or niche on the inside wall indicating the direction of the Makkah was also important. So mihrab was just like a little niche in the wall which indicated the direction of the Makkah. So with the coming of Muslim, mosque became very important, and the features the mosque had: large courtyard, then these towers also called as minarets, then is domes and use of Islamic calligraphy and geometric shapes. Now our Havelis. Havelis are very, very important. Now they've talked about the Havelis, the Baolis. Now Havelis, what are they? Havelis are something like a modern huge houses, and they were mostly built in Rajasthan. Their special features were colorful paintings on the wall and huge courtyards. Now, what did actually Haveli had? Haveli had rooms, Haveli has rooms surrounded by a courtyard. Now, these courtyards are the private places where the family members gather together for interaction. Now, the walls of the Haveli are painted with very magnificent paintings and the murals, right? अब walls हैं and doors कैसे हैं? The wooden doors, windows, gates of the Havelis have very intricate carvings. Then Havelis were built in such a way so that it could protect the person who was staying in the Haveli from heat and dust from the outside. So their cool interiors are indeed an architectural wonder, right? So courtyard, I had shown you, this is something like a courtyard if you can just see from here, right? Now, so Havelis had rooms, Havelis have rooms surrounded by the courtyard, and these courtyards are the private places where the family members stay. The walls have paintings, the doors, windows, gates have carvings, and the Havelis are built in such a way that it protects the people from heat and dust from the outside. Cool interiors are an architectural wonder. So see, this is, how they kind of looked, the Havelis, right? Okay, now comes Baolis. Now, what is a Baoli? Actually, Baoli is nothing but just like a place where you can kind of, it's an example of water conservation. You can act, and it has these steep steps here, right? Now, Baoli would be something like this, and you also have these, kind of stairs here, right? So some kind of stairs like this. Right? So Baoli was like a steep wall. They were built in the medieval period. Wells having steep steps leading to water in the well stored underground. So these Baolis, if you can see these steps which you can see from here. The steps from here. So basically, they were the steep walls which were built in the medieval period, and these walls they led to well stored underground water, and they were mainly built in Haryana and Gujarat. They were excellent examples. They are the excellent examples of water conservation. Right, now is tank. Now tank was also an important source of irrigation. So building of tank was regarded as a very important duty of the ruler. And the rulers who actually constructed tanks and reservoirs, they indicated the importance of storing and preserving water, a semi-precious resource. Now comes your fort, tombs and gardens, right? Now, the Mughal emperors expressed their power and grandeur through building magnificent forts, like Agra Fort I had talked about, right? Then is the Red Fort. They also beautified their monuments by laying them in the middle of the gardens called as Char Bagh. So they also kind of made their monuments more beautiful by laying them in the middle of the garden known as the Char Bagh. Then they also built the tombs. So first they built the forts, that is important. So we have most important the Agra Fort, the Red Fort. Then they kind of beautified their monuments by laying them in the middle of gardens called as Char Bagh. Then the tombs. See, tomb is a place where their ruler was buried underneath, and a huge building was made over that. So Taj Mahal is also actually a tomb. Okay? So it had a central towering dome, right, and a tall gateway. Example is the Humayun's tomb, and Humayun's tomb is something which later was transformed in terms of architecture into Taj Mahal, right? So Humayun's tomb can be termed as the I would say. Right. Now comes the new engineering styles. Now, what are we left with actually? We'll do the new engineering styles. We'll do the new painting styles. We'll do the kind of languages. We'll do the literature. We'll do the music. And that will be the end of this video. So let's start with the engineering skills. Now, there were two type of, engineering skills were there. One was... it wasn't actually arculate. The exact word is arculate. Yeah, rightly done that. Arculate, and the other is your tribeat style. Now, what are these styles? Now, I have kind of given you example of both the styles. So let's read them. First is the arculate style, like this. Introduction of arches. This is the arch that I keep talking about. Introduction of arches to give support to superstructures above the doors and windows. Because they would build, these structures here. Then use of limestone cement to give strength to the buildings. And when the cement was mixed with stone chips, hard and strong concrete was formed. And with such material, they could build up the forts, palaces, and tombs. So this is something like an arculate style, where you have the arches, right? And you also have the wedge-shaped block, or these what you call the bricks, right? So this is called as the arculate. The other is your trabeated, right? This is placement of a horizontal beam across the two columns. It was used in the construction of temples, mosques, and baolis. So it was like this. Now it was a placement of a horizontal beam across two columns, right? Two columns, across the two columns, and this kind of kind of a style was used in the construction of temples, mosques, and baolis. Now, what were the new painting styles, right? See, basically Mughal period was known for its painting traditions, but after the Aurangzeb, it actually, it was on a decline in Mughal empire. So these painters, they moved to two places. One, they moved to Rajputana. Number two, they moved to the foothills of Himalayas, that is your Himachal Pradesh. But of course, there were two type of painting styles, Rajputana and Pahari style, and that was based on the local themes. Then comes your new languages. Now we'll be talking about two languages, that is Persian, and languages like Hindi, Bangla, Marathi, that is the local languages. So first is the Persian. Now Turks adopted Persian as the language of literature and administration. Most important Persian writer was Amir Khusro. He wrote in Persian, most of it, but he also used Hindi language. Now Amir Khusro is also known as the father of Qawwali. Now Qawwalis are termed as the devotional music of the Indian Sufis. He was a great musician. He enriched Hindustani classical music by introducing khayal and Tarana style of music. The invention of tabla is also attributed to him. So with the advent of Turks, there is a new language, Persian. Persian was adopted as the language of literature and administration, and the most important Persian writer is Amir Khusro. He wrote in Persian and Hindi, also known as the father of Qawwali. Qawwali is the devotional music of the Indian Sufis, right? And he enriched Hindustani classical music by introducing Khyal and Tarana. Invention of tabla is attributed to him. Now, besides Persian, some other languages were also developed like Hindi, Bangla, Marathi. How? Because Bhakti poems, I told you by this time there was Bhakti movement and Sufism going on, right? So Bhakti poems were composed in these regional languages so that common people could also understand. Now these poems, the main themes in this poem was love and devotion towards the God. Now comes the literature. Now literature is very, very important. So basically we'll be talking about the Persian literature, then the Hindi literature, then the Marathi literature, Malayalam and Gurmukhi. So we have the Persian literature. See, Persian literature reached its zenith during the time of Akbar. बहुत ज़्यादा जो है अपनी पूरी bloom जो है उनकी हो गई थी, राइट, पर्शियन लिटरेचर की. और इस टाइम पे अकबर के टाइम पर हम अबुल फजल देखते हैं हु रोट अकबर नामा एंड आईने अकबरी, एंड इवन महाभारत वाज ट्रांसलेटेड in Persian. Now in Hindi we have the most important poet as the Tulsidas. He also wrote Ramcharitmanas in Awadhi. Now what was the Awadhi? Awadhi was a dialect of Hindi spoken in the eastern UP, right? A style of speaking, right? Then is Marathi literature that was mostly in the Deccan, and most important, it was patronized by these Bhakti saints like Eknath and Tukaram, right? You also have the Malayalam literature and Gurmukhi. So Persian, Hindi, Marathi, Malayalam, Gurmukhi. Persian, it saw the writers like Abul Fazl, the author of Akbarnama, Aine Akbari. Mahabharat was translated into Persian. Hindi, you have Tulsidas who wrote Ramcharitmanas in Awadhi, a dialect of Hindi spoken in the eastern UP. Marathi literature, in Deccan Marathi language developed. Bhakti saints like Eknath and Tukaram wrote in Marathi, Malayalam and Gurmukhi literature. Now is music. Now, Orthodox Islam does not support music, right? But the influence of the Sufi ideas led to the development of music. Many Muslim rulers and nobles patronized music. Like Amir Khusro, a poet and the musician in the court of Alauddin Khilji, commented that music in India is the finest in the world. Right? So basically, Amir Khusro, he was a poet and a musician in the court of Alauddin Khilji, and he is taught that music in India is the finest in the world. Now Turks, with the Delhi Sultans, they also brought with them Rabab and Sarangi. Now during the time of the Mughal rule, the famous musicians were Swami Haridas, Tansen and Baiju Bawara. Right? Then you also have the new ragas, tals, musical forms, musical instruments which flourished in South India, and there were two types of music which flourished. One was called as the Hindustani music, other was called as the Carnatic music, and Carnatic music mostly flourished in the South India. Now is Tansen. Tansen was one of the Navratans of the court of at the court of Emperor Akbar. He was the greatest musicians of the Hindustani classical music. It is believed that by ringing Rag Deepak, he could light the fire. Right? So he was the greatest musician of the Hindustani classical music. Now in your book you also have the case study, and that they've talked about Shah Jahan. Now, what impact did the Shah Jahan have on the Mughal architecture? Now one is Petra Dwara was introduced. Now what is Petra Dwara? Use of marble and decorating the walls with the floral designs made of semi-precious stones. So it is basically, you must have seen even on the walls of Golden Temple at places, this Petra Dwara has been used. So use of marble and decorating the walls with the floral designs made up of semi-precious stones. So ये लोग क्या करते थे, घड़ते लिखते थे, जैसे इंस्क्राइब करते थे डिज़ाइंस, फ्लोरल डिज़ाइंस, उसके बीच में, डिज़ाइन के बीच में जो है सेमी प्रेशर स्टोन्स जो है दे वुड फिल. सो दैट इज़ हाउ दे वुड डेकोरेट द वॉल, एंड दे यूज्ड white marble, right? Now Shah Jahan used this decorative style in Taj Mahal. Now Taj Mahal was built as a tomb or a mausoleum for his wife Mumtaz Mahal. The perfect beauty of Taj Mahal can be seen in its massive dome. I've explained to you, dome is something like this, and four slender minarets. Right, so Taj Mahal is known for its massive dome, four slender minarets, and of course delicate marble screens and floral designs. Now this took about 22 years, around 22,000 laborers, 1,000 elephants. It was built at a cost of 32 million rupees. Right, then there are certain mosques which were built by Shah Jahan. Now first is Moti Masjid in Agra Fort. This is built in the white marble. Then is Jama Masjid of Delhi, built in the red sandstone. Then is Red Fort in his capital Shah Jahanabad in Delhi. So obviously Shah Jahan के अंदर जो है बच्चे आपके mosque जो है Moti Masjid, Jama Masjid and the Red Fort. Right, so again I'll tell you, name the mosque built by Shah Jahan: Moti Masjid, Jama Masjid and the Red Fort. Right, now Moti Masjid was built in the Agra Fort, built in the white marble. Jama Masjid is built in the red sandstone, and Red Fort in his own capital Shah Jahanabad in Delhi. Now Red Fort, made of sandstone, is also famous for its building. He also laid the foundation of his city of Shah Jahanabad, which was the seventh city of Taj Mahal, and also your Taj Mahal, city of Delhi and Taj Mahal. Right, now this Red Fort, it actually houses two kind of places. One is the Hall of Public Audience, Diwan-e-Aam, and Diwan-e-Khas, the Hall of Private Building. This is found in the Red Fort. Okay, so this is all I have for you, right? I think I've explained the chapter in great detail. If you have any queries, you can again mention that in the comment box, and I will be more than happy to help you, right? Now, the other thing important in this chapter is the questions. So very soon I will also come out with a video in which I will discuss some important questions and all the blanks which have been done at the end of your, which have been asked at the end of your book. But I would say that why don't you listen to this video, read the chapter and try to see how many fill in the blanks or the questions you are able to answer. Assess yourself, right? So stay home, stay safe, and I will see you with the next video very soon.